Most current Western countries live in what is referred to as a hyperhistoric era, where societies rely on data for ensuring the well-being of their citizens. In more and more aspects, we're becoming dependent on data. Science, and especially technology, occupy a special place in this era, acting as propellers forward into more innovations. Nevertheless, science is not an ideology. It has no moral of determining how humans on the whole ought to act. Historically, religion has held this place, more recently replaced with ideologies like humanism, capitalism, and liberalism. However, these ideologies are no longer fully equipped to deal with our modern technologies and new dilemmas. There is now, however, talk of one arising ideology that might become the next moral compass for hyperhistoric tech societies. It is called Dataism. Dataism is a very deterministic ideology. It affirms that everything everywhere is a source of data, and with enough data, one could potentially perfectly predict everything. Freedom of information is the greatest good of all in this ideology, and accordingly, the value of anything is determined by its contribution to constant flux and processing of data. For most of history, humans would have been the most valuable assets to this ideology, similarly to most ideologies for that matter. Humans have more complex communication systems and societies than animals do, which all together contribute to the data flux. And given that humans are themselves a kind of agglomerate of algorithms, data-driven algorithms like the one that Dataism proposes must also be the best way to take decisions for humans. With free access to more data, humans could potentially eradicate almost all sources of suffering and always take the best decisions. This could potentially lead to the existence of algorithms that know us better than we know ourselves, and therefore could take better decisions in our stead, which is why Dataism threatens to replace the current ideologies. Diseases could be prevented early, crime could be averted before it even occurs. However, for that to happen, data needs to flow. With more and more data, you obtain increased understanding and thus control over your fate. Your phone could track your speech patterns to detect onset of dementia. Your furniture could scan your entire body for cancerous formations. Big data would watch, record, and evaluate you. We could diagnose and prevent practically every source of unhappiness. With this much data, you could create opportunities to improve everyone's quality of life and possibly even do what no ideology has ever been able to deliver on yet: heaven on earth. There are obviously mixed feelings as to whether this is an acceptable new ideology. However, some 20th century thinkers with no idea about the current developments already discussed topics that are relevant here. In his essay, The Question Concerning Technology, Heidegger posits that modern technologies do something that he refers to as challenging forth, which more or less translates to exploiting or turning something into a resource. He calls the state of being a resource standing reserve. According to Heidegger, our use of technology creates a world in which everything around us is merely an object that exists for us, and it additionally compels us to use the world in the same way that we use the objects. Everything around us, including other humans, becomes standing reserves, serving some or another purpose for us and our benefit alone. This view of the world is called enframing. Such a world, one would argue, is an empty world, where everything is like a mirror of ourselves, reflecting only what value we place in it. These same aspects are even more strongly present in Dataism. Humans are, more than ever, standing reserves for the single purpose of contributing to the flux of data. All of our information about ourselves, our behavior, and our emotions is challenged forth for the sake of understanding and controlling our surroundings. Humans would become nothing but resources in a giant data manufacturing machine, like little mines for information about preventing diseases, optimizing happiness and health. Moreover, not wanting to share your data goes against freedom of information, which is the central tenet of Dataism. But is this really a world that can be tolerated? Freud wrote an essay about the uncanny, and Dataism practically promises to create a sci-fi world that definitely qualifies for that term. We'll focus on two things that Freud claims make something uncanny. Firstly, something that should have stayed hidden but is nevertheless revealed, and secondly, doubles. Concerning the revealing, in a world where all data is public and all of your personal qualities can be determined by algorithms, there is ample opportunity for such uncanniness to arise. Say that one day the algorithms reveal some very personal aspect of you, for example your sexual desires, or that your sibling is quite certainly going to commit a crime, or that your new partner is very likely to cheat on you, or that your newborn baby is going to be diagnosed with a fatal illness and die in only a few years. Your baby is in no way sick yet, but you know that soon he or she will be. Would you even really put in your best effort to raise a baby like that, knowing that you'd only have him for another year or two? If you aren't sure, the algorithms would be sure for you. All of this information is challenged forth and used for purposes you're no longer fully aware of, and that all is supposedly for the good of humanity. For any entity to have such detailed, intimate, and delicate information about you is scary. Somewhere in the algorithm there would be a digital you, a doppelganger, which is the second topic of Freud. So this copy of you is initially supposed to give you a sense of security, a way to ensure your own well-being, keeping you alive for as long as possible with your medical history, for example. Nevertheless, just as well as it can be used for good, this double also has the huge potential to be used against you. After all, it knows everything about you, your weaknesses and vulnerabilities, how to manipulate you, exploit you, and pacify you all at the same time. This double, first seen as a security measure, becomes your jailer. So, despite all of the seducing promises of a better world that Dataism offers, and that its current followers preach, the outcome of adopting such an ideology would fundamentally and violently shift not only how we enframe the world around us, but also how we, as persons, are enframed into something that is less. An undignified, prearranged existence with the only goal of producing information. It seems like a doomed existence where nothing unexpected could ever take place. Heidegger, at the end of his text, proposes that questioning our use of technology is enough for removing the danger that comes with it. But can Dataism be redeemed by simply questioning the technology we use to gather data? By definition, Dataism relies on free access to all data. Currently, that data is mostly being challenged forth, and it is questionable if that could ever change.